swarm of Ukrainian drones weaves through the waves. It's Ride of the Valkyries 2022. Russia's Black Sea flagship vessel Admiral Makarov is hit, while other ships are damaged or possibly even sunk. It's an audacious attack by the Ukrainians and a humiliating loss for the Russians. Above all, it's a sign of modernity, of how much warfare's changed. Drones have already been important so far in this war, but could they actually win it for Ukraine? That's what we'll find out today. We'll talk more about this particular attack soon, but first, let's have a look at the hardware and software making a big impact on the battlefield. We should say the impact relates to both sides. As we make this video, Ukrainian forces report that Russia has launched 30 drone attacks in just 2 days, two varying levels of success. In total, Ukraine has seen 4,500 missile strikes and over 8,000 air raids from Russia, with the drones playing a major role. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's intent on clipping the wings of Russia. It seems Ukraine has already had some success in this regard, with the Ukrainian military saying it's already shot down a large number of Russian drones. One of those blasted out of the sky was an Iranian-made drone. Analysts are saying Iran has been selling Russia a large number of such drones, albeit secretly. Moscow and Tehran have so far denied this. The US thinks otherwise and is not happy about how Russia has conducted itself in regard to drones. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia's use of drones is appalling. He charged Russian commanders with using unmanned aerial machines with the intention of trying to kill Ukrainian civilians and destroy the infrastructure they rely on for electricity, for water, and for heat. The ones that allegedly came from Iran are Shahed 136s. These are kamikaze drones. They fly off, they look around, they find a target, and they fly into it. Reports state that the 136s have become an aerial menace. These things can fly for hundreds of miles, and then out of nowhere they dive bomb toward their target. The spectacle is terrifying to anyone on the ground. They've already dive bombed into power stations, leaving hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians without electricity. In September, it was reported that some 136s took out 2 armored personnel carriers and 4 artillery systems. The warhead on that drone, which is at the front of the nose, can weigh as much as 110 pounds. It's a hefty payload for a drone that's not very big, and the damage they can cause is pretty significant. The units are 11 feet long and have a wingspan of 8.2 feet. They can reach speeds of 115 miles per hour and may be able to fly anywhere between 1,100 and 1,600 miles once they've been programmed to hit a specific target. No one knows how much Iran charges for them. The media says they could cost anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000. In terms of modern warfare, that's pennies for Russia, especially considering the amount of damage they can do. The bargain basement drone is very popular right now in Russia. Before the 136s came onto the scene in the Ukraine war sometime in September, Russia has already used other deadly kamikaze drones, including the Zala KYB strike drone. These Russian-made weapons have been around for a few years now. Russia used quite a large number of them in Syria between 2015 and 2018. This is how one military technology website described the Zala. The wide triangular-winged unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, is designed for hidden launch and silent operation during missions. It can attack ground and sea-based enemy infrastructure, as well as lightly armored targets. These are much smaller than the 136s, but in terms of their silicone brains, they're quite smart. They use artificial intelligence coupled with visual identification technology to find their targets. They can hover above a target, and then once the AI decides there's something like a tank down below, they leave the upper atmosphere to dive down at a speed of 80 miles an hour. Russia has had other kinds of drones, including the Lancet kamikaze drone. While these drones, like the Zala, are formidable at taking out tanks and other military vehicles, they can't hold that much of a payload, and their range isn't all that great. That's the thing about the 136s, they have a decent range and can carry payloads that can do a hell of a lot more damage than blowing the turret off a tank. Military nerds have actually debated which drones are better. We're not going to give an opinion, but we will say that all these drones have been effective at times. Okay, now that we have that part done, we want to talk about Ukrainian drones. As you all know, support for Russia around the world is rather scant. On the other hand, support for Ukraine is global. Perhaps as much as 50 countries have been giving aid to Ukraine, and some of those aid packages include some rather outstanding military equipment. Total U.S. aid is said to be about $54 billion, and a good chunk of it is military aid. The UK has also spent billions on aid, while Poland, Germany, and France have also made a mark on what weapons Ukraine now owns. It's hard to say how much more Ukraine will receive, but rest assured, many people in the U.S. alone think $54 billion is not enough. As you watch this, some politicians in the U.S. are trying to pass bipartisan legislation to support Ukraine even more. The UK has also promised to bolster its aid package. What do you think this means in terms of drones? You would likely come to the conclusion that Ukraine could out-drone Russia with ease. Well, let's look into that. You obviously need anti-drone weapons in this war, and Ukraine was recently given some of them. The benefactor in this case was Israel, a country that had said it wouldn't supply Ukraine with weapons as it didn't want to mess up its relationship with Russia. It's a complicated story described by one journalist as a diplomatic tightrope. We won't go into that today. It seems Israel will not provide lethal weapons to Ukraine, but has already helped Ukraine in terms of drone intelligence. It's provided Ukraine with what are called the Smash 2000L anti-UAV systems. In short, these can take out drones. They may well be used against those 136s. They contain autonomous fire control systems, or FCS, so they might be able to shoot down those Russian drones before they get to their targets. You need an actual human shooter to fire the gun, but the intelligent systems ensure the drone's flight path is tracked in a way that'll basically ensure the shooter can't miss. This should be effective for smaller drones, but it might not be very good when we're talking about huge combat drones. The UK might also be helping in terms of defense, since along with the US, it's supplying Ukraine with what are called ISTAR. That stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition, and Reconnaissance. It's basically related to gathering intelligence and can be used with uncrewed aircraft systems, UASs. This might warn Ukraine early when one of those Russian drones is nearing its target. Another thing coming by the way of the UK is micro-drones. The country announced that part of the billions it's donating to Ukraine will consist of 850 Black Hornet nano drones. These things are basically a set of flying eyes around a rather small, almost silent bird. If you want to see places where a human might be shot dead in his tracks, you might send in a nano drone. The UK said these drones were part of a $54 million package, also comprising 200 surveillance drones and 1,000 anti-tank loitering munitions. As for US aid, the list is long as your arm. It includes all kinds of surveillance tech, weapons that can blow vehicles out of the sky, and drones. Part of a recent $775 million package consisted of 15 Scan Eagle low-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles. These are primarily used for reconnaissance since they can fly for many hours and are hooked up to excellent surveillance technology. They were originally used to spot fish in the sea. It seems they can also carry a payload of high-precision weapons. Ironically, it's thought Iran captured one of these and started modeling some of its own drones after it. Other US packages have included counter-unmanned aerial systems, which are not about firing weapons but are about the detection and interdiction of enemy drones. That's not the case with the 700 US-made Switchblade drones. These are kamikaze drones built to fly into a target and destroy it. The Phoenix Ghost drones the US has sent are said to be very similar to the Switchblades. A bit like the 136s, these things fly in the sky until they've identified their target, and then they swoop down to hit it. This is why they're often called the loitering munition. They loiter and then they drop down. They're small enough to be carried in a backpack and can be launched easily, making them very handy on the battlefield. A US official told the press, these tactical UAVs can be useful against Russian vehicles and artillery. According to one Ukrainian commander, similar drones have already been used against vehicles and tanks when the Russians were sleeping. If Russia tries to do something similar, Ukraine might be helped somewhat by one of the 12 Titan systems the US has provided. These are the counter-UAV systems we just mentioned. Still, even with all this defense technology, Russia has had a fair bit of success with its drones. Okay, so we think you can now understand that much of the war is unmanned, which isn't surprising, given that unmanned bomb technology such as the German Doodlebug was used back in World War II. These weren't smart weapons, though. They were basically a cross between a missile and a plane. When the wings fell off, the missile came down. They wouldn't have stood a chance these days with all the available interception technology. In fact, Ukraine reported a while back that 60% of the 136s were intercepted before they got to their targets. Ukraine used anti-air missiles and electronic jamming devices to achieve a staggering figure. Nonetheless, the remaining 40% did a lot of damage. A military analyst told the BBC, they fly low and you can send them in waves. These swarms of drones are much harder to counter by air defenses. When that report came out in mid-October, the BBC said it wasn't certain if Ukraine had been fighting back with similar kamikaze drones, but the article said it was likely Ukraine had hit a Russian military base in western Crimea with them. It might have also hit an airbase close to Sevastopol and some ships in the Sevastopol harbor. It seems that at that point, the US Switchblades hadn't been used yet. The best drones Ukraine had been using are its 50 or so Bayraktar TB2s from Turkey. These state-of-the-art attack drones are also useful for reconnaissance and surveillance. They might cost at least $2 million each and possibly as much as $5 million, so they won't be doing any kamikaze missions anytime soon. Russia has had its own high-tech attack drones, such as the S-70 Okhotnik B or Hunter and the new stealth combat drone named Grom or Thunder, what's been called the Russian answer to the Valkyrie. As Ukraine has done so much damage with its TB2s, you might wonder why Russia hasn't struck back with its highly advanced attack drones. The country also has a host of other top-level drones, including the Altius II, Kronstadt Siru, and the Kronstadt Orion. It seems Russia might be reluctant to pull out the big guns regarding its drones. According to analysts, Ukraine's defenses have been much better than Russian defenses so far. Maybe right now Russia would prefer to sacrifice a few cheap Iranian imports over losing some of its very expensive unmanned machinery. But let's say Russia does pull this trump card out at some point. What then? Well, we think you know what. Earlier this year, The Intercept said that U.S. military-industrial complex was trying to twist the arm of President Joe Biden to allow them to send Ukraine the U.S.'s cream of the crop in terms of drones. It was said the defense contractor General Atomics had already met with Ukrainian representatives and discussed sending over some of the $32 million a unit hunter-killer MQ-9 Reaper drones armed with Hellfire missiles. These things can really rain hell from the sky, although it has to be said that when the U.S. has used them in Afghanistan, Somalia, and some other countries, raining hell down has sometimes consisted of maiming and killing innocent civilians. These are weapons with frightening destructive power. So, if the U.S. starts sending them to Ukraine, Russia's retaliation will no doubt be severe. At the end of the day, just because you have a bigger weapon doesn't mean you should use it. After all, the victims are real. This isn't a movie. Reaper drones would mean young Russian men returning to Russia in pieces, which could lead to more Ukrainian families being incinerated in their homes. Some restraint has to be shown. Escalation is not a pleasant thought, at least for some pundits talking about the war. Still, the so-called hawks in Washington might tell you differently. They might tell you that this war can be won pretty quickly with bigger, more advanced weapons. If the TB2s can do that much damage, what would a Reaper be able to do? It seems Ukraine wants them too. Politico recently reported Ukraine wants armed drones. Is the U.S. ready to deliver? There's also something called the Missile Technology Control Regime to consider. This was created to contain the use of weapons of mass destruction. So when Ukraine plays the Reaper card, maybe Russia will say, "I'll raise you 5 serious drones." The war would certainly get very ugly very soon. A U.S. expert said, "In my view, Ukraine has the right to defend itself, and some weapon supplies are warranted on that basis. But supplying large, long-range drones would be a significant escalation in the types of systems supplied to Ukraine, and as such, shouldn't go forward without significant scrutiny by Congress." As we said, some members of Congress from the Democratic and Republican parties are trying to push legislation through that will mean the Department of Defense can sell as many weapons as it wants to Ukraine. It may happen. The Reapers may get sent, but the escalation threat is real. The Intercept said another matter of concern is Ukraine's sizable neo-Nazi faction and the fact the country is also home to one of the largest arms trafficking markets. We have to think about the future here. Time and again, the weapons the U.S. has supplied abroad have been used against its soldiers later. That said, the swarm attack that damaged Admiral Makarov was something of a military accomplishment. As we are making this video, we still don't know what kind of drones were used in the attack. It's still a changing story in terms of all the details. While some articles talk about significant damage to Russian vehicles, others say slight damage. And one Russian news agency said all the drones were shot down. By the time the infographics creative team is done making the show, you might know more. As for the question we asked from the start, could this war be won with drones? We think the answer is no. What they are doing is causing a lot of damage. They're playing a part in a war of attrition. It's one hit for Ukraine and one hit for Russia. The US might have sent over those switchblades, but we doubt the Hawks will win. So no Reapers will be used by Ukraine anytime soon. That kind of escalation doesn't bear thinking about. So we reckon this war of attrition will be the way ahead. To quote another analyst, drones are not a war-winning technology, but they're a war-enabling technology. Right now, we think Ukraine has the upper hand regarding non-lethal drone technology, although recent reports state the average lifespan of a surveillance drone in Ukraine is just a week. Still, the technology is advancing so fast that they're getting better at not being seen or intercepted. A specialist in drone technology recently told AP everyone will have millions of drones that can't be defeated. Welcome to the next installment of Black Mirror. Now you need to watch Why Russia Can't Stop US Weapons, or have a look at I Survived 100 Days Fighting in World War III, not Minecraft.